god, this is gonna be so bad. Gypsy Rose Blanchard is probably the most well-known victim of Munchausen by proxy, and she now has her own reality TV show on Lifetime called Gypsy Rose Life After Lockup. The show is going to chronicle her life now as a free woman after being released from prison, where she served 8 years for the death of her mother. Now, I'm going to be careful about the way that I word things in this video when it comes to that, because I just want to keep it appropriate for YouTube. If you aren't familiar with Gypsy's story already, there are a ton of creators on here who have made videos about this case. There are a lot of documentaries that you can find, and there is a show on Hulu called The Act, which is actually really great if watching a scripted show is more your thing. It's pretty accurate and the acting is really great, so I highly recommend it. Alright, let's get into this recap. Episode 1 is titled So This Is Freedom, and it takes place at the end of December 2023. It picks up right where we left off in the last documentary, The Prison Confessions of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Her family, including her father, Rod, her stepmother, Christy, her sister, Mia, and her husband, Ryan, are all gathered in Missouri, and they're getting ready for Gypsy's release. Now, just in case you aren't caught up, Ryan and Gypsy got married while she was still in prison. They actually connected when Ryan started sending her letters. Gypsy was previously engaged to a man named Ken, who we will be hearing a lot about later on in the season, and I honestly cannot wait for that. Rod talks a little bit about his feelings about how Gypsy and Ryan got married while she was in prison, how he's a little bit skeptical of Ryan, but he did give his blessing for the marriage. I get the feeling that he just wants her to have the freedom to make her own decisions and mistakes. So I really get the vibe that Rod does not think that this marriage is going to last. Gypsy is a grown woman though, and I think he is really sensitive to the fact that she has been controlled her entire life, and that it's time for her to have the freedom to do what she wants and make her own decisions. Now, Ryan is super excited to be the one to go pick up Gypsy from prison. He is all smiles. He cannot contain his excitement. I really want to say that it's sweet, and it is sweet, I guess, but there is just something about Ryan that I cannot quite put my finger on. I'm really skeptical of him. I'm really skeptical of anyone who would marry someone who's in prison, who hasn't really gotten to experience life with them in person. It's just all very questionable to me, so I am really curious to see how he does when things start to get hard. And as we probably already know, things are not going well with Gypsy and Ryan currently in real time, so I'm very interested to see how things went down between them. Gypsy really praises Ryan in this episode for being the only man that has stuck around and that can handle the amount of emotional baggage that she carries, which I find pretty interesting because later on he kind of gives me the feeling that he is not very sensitive to that. And we'll definitely talk more about that later. Now, back to Gypsy's release. Ryan repeatedly states that he is so excited to hold Gypsy and to love on her, and that he just can't wait to see her. Finally, around 2:30 in the morning, Ryan gets a call from the prison that he can come pick up his wife. They decided to do this, I think, in the middle of the night because there is a lot of media attention around Gypsy, and they wanted it to be as secretive and quiet and safe as possible. The cameras were not allowed to actually film Ryan going into the prison, but it was only a few minutes in there, and then he's back in the car with Gypsy, and she is thrilled to be free, which is totally understandable. And then the two were off to start their life together. Ryan can't stop telling Gypsy how good she looks and talks about how hot she is. I don't know. The way that he looks at her and the way that he tells her how good she looks and how hot she is and how he can't wait to touch her and stuff. It just all made me feel a little bit icky and uncomfortable. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know why. I can't even fully explain it to you. I didn't like it. Ryan does give her her wedding ring while they're in the car, and they're both very pleased to find out that it fits. They finally make it to their hotel. They enjoy some fast food and they lay in the bed and they chat. Ryan makes a joke about how if Gypsy snores, he's going to need a divorce. And I just find that so ironically hilarious. I mean, also kind of sad, but snoring ends up being one of the many complaints that Gypsy had about Ryan leading up to her wanting a divorce. I just couldn't believe he said that. I wonder if that's going to come up later in the season too. All right, moving on to the next morning. The first thing that we talk about, of course, Gypsy and Ryan confirm that they have consummated their marriage. And Gypsy calls him a dynamo, which I don't think I've ever heard anyone say. I don't know why we need to know about their sex life, but apparently we do. So you're welcome, I guess, for that information. For Gypsy's first full day of freedom, she's wearing this very interesting shirt that has horizontal slits all down the side, a pair of jeans, and apparently a pair of boots that do not fit her. So the two need to make a quick trip to the store so she can get a pair that fits. It does not take long for paparazzi to find her out in the world. They actually end up following Gypsy and Ryan all the way to Gypsy's family's house that they've rented for her release. Meanwhile, social media is freaking out. People have been counting down the days for Gypsy's release. She's accumulated millions of followers on Instagram before even being released from prison. So many people are rooting for her and they're just fascinated and they just want to know what she's going to be doing with her new free life. I remember this time my TikTok feed was nothing but Gypsy Rose. I was like, what is even happening? I had followed this case for years, actually. Like I said, I had watched the show The Act. I had watched documentaries about it. It was just always a case that really fascinated me. And clearly it fascinated a lot of you guys too. So just 9 hours after Gypsy's release, it's already gotten around that she is in Kansas City and that she plans to go to a Chiefs game over the weekend. So while in the car on the way to see her family for the first time in however long it's been since she's seen them, her Missouri parole officer calls her and tells her that she should be on her way to Louisiana right now because Louisiana is where she and Ryan plan to live, and that's where her new parole officer is. So while she's in this little transition period of being in Missouri and heading to Louisiana, she technically has 2 parole officers. And she had already told her parole officer in Louisiana her plan for when she got out, that she would spend a couple of days with family and then she would head there after the new year. However, her Missouri parole officer says, no, you have to leave immediately. Please leave. And she said, wait a minute, I have all of these plans already, and my parole officer in Louisiana said it was fine. I've already gotten permission from all the people I need to talk to about this. And he's kind of like, all right. And they hang up the phone. Now, one interesting thing about this scene to me was how heated Ryan got immediately. Like, as soon as he heard the commotion on the phone, he starts cutting Gypsy off. He starts trying to talk over her, trying to talk through her. And she was getting really irritated with him. But she manages to communicate with the parole officer and they seemingly get it all figured out. Now, while all this is going on, the family is back at the house and they are talking about Gypsy's social media presence because it's only day 1 and it's already a thing. She's already posting selfies and things like that, and the tide is starting to turn. Like, things are starting to change. As fast as Gypsy got all of these followers and all of this support, she just as quickly gained so many haters and people that were like ready to pounce on her. So as soon as she said that she was going to a Chiefs game, everybody was like, oh, she just wants to meet Taylor Swift. So now everyone is saying, oh, she just wants to meet Taylor Swift. She's using her fame and notoriety to get what she wants for free, as usual. I mean, it happened fast, y'all. So the family's talking about that, and I think that The lesson here was that Gypsy should not have immediately gotten on social media because she has been locked up for so long. I mean, when she was on social media, it was back in the MySpace days, like the early days of Facebook. So she's missed a lot, and it's really a hard thing to navigate social media when you don't know anything about it. So Gypsy and Ryan, they finally make it to the house, and they are reunited with everyone. And it's really exciting for a little bit, but it doesn't last for long because before Gypsy can even step foot inside the house, the Missouri parole officer is calling her again, telling her, no, ma'am, you need to go straight to Louisiana. You cannot be in Kansas City. You cannot hang around there. You need to leave. Thankfully, Gypsy's attorney just happened to be at the house too, so he was able to talk to this parole officer and try to get things figured out because Gypsy also calls the other parole officer who's telling her, no, everything's fine, you can stay there for a few days, not a big deal. This back and forth battle between parole offices leaves Gypsy really emotional. She's terrified of being sent back to prison and doing the wrong thing, and she just doesn't know what to do in this moment, and she gets really overwhelmed. The attorney said that this is all most likely because of the social media presence and the frenzy around her, and that if she was anybody else, I don't think that they would have cared really what she was doing for those couple of days. He said it most likely would have just flown right under the radar anyway. The attorney also brings up a really good point to the Missouri parole officer that even if she drove the 13-hour drive straight to Louisiana where they were going to be living, that she wouldn't even be able to check in person until January 3rd because it's a holiday. All the offices are closed until then anyway. So it didn't really make sense for her to have to rush there, especially if she already talked to the parole officer over the phone. And he was totally fine with her plan. Unfortunately, this episode ends before we see if the miscommunication is resolved. So we'll have to wait until next week to see how it all plays out. In this season of Life After Lockup, we get to see Gypsy adjusting to life as a free woman. Due to her upbringing and spending her adult life in prison, she has almost no real life skills. So she's learning a lot of things for the very first time. We'll follow along on her journey of getting a nose job, having her teeth fixed because she had a lot of unnecessary dental work due to the abuse that she suffered at the hands of her mother. We'll also see the negative effects of fame and how the media attention could impact her parole. Then there's the downfall of her marriage to Ryan and the return of her ex-fiancé, Ken. Whether you love her or hate her, there is no denying that there is something about that Gypsy Rose Blanchard. And I certainly cannot wait to see the rest of this season. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and you turn on your notifications. Like the video and comment below what you thought of this episode. Thanks for watching, you guys. I will see you in the next one. Bye!